very good afternoon. My name is Divya Shani and I'm from Sivanandam, and my matrix number is 265012. I'm from Group A, Financial Risk Management, for session A201, and the bank chosen by me is the Central Bank of India. So, firstly, I would like to introduce the bank. So, the bank was set up in 1911 and it was the main Indian business bank which was entirely claimed and overseen by Indians. The foundation of the bank was a definitive acknowledgement to the fantasy of Sir Sorabji Pokanawala, the author of the bank. So, such was the degree of pride felt by Sir Sorabji Pokanawala that he declared Central Bank of India as the property of the country and of the nation's benefit. Moving on, I'll be introducing the problem statement. So, currently, the return of assets is a major problem for a few of the banks in India. The return of assets indicates how much or how profitable a bank is relative to its total number of assets. This affects the probability ratio of the bank. Moving on to research objectives, the first objective is to investigate the relationship between return on assets towards the firm's internal factor. Second, to investigate the relationship between return on assets towards the firm's external factor. And thirdly, to investigate the relationship between return of assets towards the firm's internal factor and external factor. As for the research questions, they are related to the objectives as well. So the first question is there any relationship between the return of assets towards the firm's internal factor? Is there any relationship between the return of assets towards the firm's external factor? And is there any relationship between the return on assets towards the firm's internal and external factor? Next, we will move on to literature review. Literature review basically gives us the views and definitions of other people on a certain topic. So I'll be explaining about the main four that I feel is important. So the first one is ROA, which is return on assets. According to investopedia.com, return on assets is in essential terms mentions to you what income will produce from contributed capital or resource. ROA in credit risk. Syed MS and Zahid N in the year 2016 stated in the Journal of Business and Financial Affairs as examined the effect of credit risk on the benefit of profitability of five business banks in UK and found that credit hazard, or known as credit risk, has a positive relationship with the bank's profitability. So inflation rate, stated by FE Knowledge Desk in financialexpress.com, inflation alludes to the ascent in the cost of most products and ventures of day by day or basic use. Market risk is, according to Investopedia by James Chen, it is the chance of a speculator encountering misfortunes because of the components that influence the general presentations of a monetary business sector. Moving on to methodology. In methodology, we have a few different techniques. One is the sampling technique, two is the statistical technique, and third is the data analysis and the variables. So the sampling technique used here is the population will be summed up by the utilizing the inferential measurements in the banking sector of India. So notwithstanding, the example utilized in this report is the Central Bank of India. So the information is examined from the 5-year annual report of Central Bank of India from the year 2015 to 2019. So statistical technique is the sample data which we gathered from the yearly reports, which is of 5 years. Data analysis, in this study there's a conceptual framework which is used to describe the relationship or correlation between one dependent variable and the other independent variables. For example, our dependent in this case is ROA, so the internal factors and the external factors are the independent variables. So as you can see the variables, there are three equations. The first one is linear regression model of return of assets with internal factors. Second one is linear regression model of return of assets with external factors. And the third equation is linear regression model on return of assets with internal and external factors. Moving on to data analysis. So here, as you can see, I'm only going to be talking about model 3 as it's the most significant. So descriptive statistics here shows the average collection period stated the highest mean and standard deviation of 286 days and 226 standard deviation respectively, which means the average collection period of the company is more unpredictable as compared to others. Interest rate showed the mean of 6.198 and the standard deviation of a volatility with 1.14. Lastly, the exchange rate showed a mean of 68.15 with a standard deviation of volatility of 4.37. Moving on is data analysis. This is for correlations. And the correlation of return on assets to internal and external factors are shown in the table. So average collection period and interest rate are positively correlated with return on asset with 0.466 and 0.330 respectively, whereas Exchange rate is negatively correlated with a value of negative 0.864. Nevertheless, all the three correlations are not significant to return on assets as the p-value is more than 0.1. Moving on, this is the model summary, which is, as you can see, the Durbin-Watson is 2.610, which is considered good as Durbin-Watson is supposed to be between 1.5 to 3.0. And as we can see, the adjusted R-square model is 98.8%, which implies the predictor variables are able to explain the observation in return on assets. Meanwhile, the 1.2 other percent is unexplainable. And here's the ANOVA. So as you can see from the ANOVA table, it has shown that it is significant with a value of 0.071 as p-value is less than 0.1. And as you can see in the last table here is the coefficients. So from the coefficient table, it can show that interest rate has the most significant effect to return to assets. So the interest is positively significant because p is equals to 0.1. Lastly is for the recommendations and conclusions. Recommendation is that we should have had other banks to study along with it, and maybe with more years to study, and also from other countries and other banks as well. In summary, based on the study and the pattern of the analysis from SPSS, Central Bank of India, it is shown that the decrease in ratio of return of assets is an issue that they should pay attention to. The board and shareholders must manage their financial decisions wisely towards the bank to enable the return of assets of the value to increase. This is because banks with poor profitability will have to take more risk and face higher funding costs. This will result the bank in a loss. That's all from me. Thank you.